my only sibling, my younger sister, got diagnosed with cancer and a year and a half later passed away. This is what got me into cancer 14 years ago. Prior to that, I had no exposure to cancer. I
Mm-hmm.
barely knew what cancer was. And so, cancer is becoming far too prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just something that affects older people anymore. The incidence of cancer rising in the younger population is disturbing.
Yeah.
If you look at colorectal cancers, they have doubled in incidence in the younger population under 55 in
Mm-hmm.
just the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
If
Yeah.
you look at mammograms, they're having discussions about bringing screening ages down to even 30 because they're just seeing a lot of, early incidence of cancer. And there's reasons they're seeing early incidence of cancer.
Mm-hmm.
But it is rising rapidly where the need to screen and the need to screen more broadly is becoming paramount for survival. It's a critical element of longevity because in high income developed countries, cancer is now the number one cause of mortality.
Mm-hmm.
It's overtaking or overtaken, cardiovascular disease, depending on what geography we're discussing. But if you have a
Mm-hmm.
solid tumor,
Mm-hmm.
lung cancer, prostate, colorectal,
Mm-hmm.
pancreatic, liver, bladder, adrenal, throat, whatever, like any of the organ tumors, skin, brain, etc.
Yeah.
The primary tumor itself, the primary lump, generally does not kill you. What
Mm-hmm.
kills you is the tumor sheds tumor cells that circulate through your bloodstream,
Mm-hmm.
known as circulating tumor cells or CTCs, the acronym for short. And the CTCs spread the cancer in your body in a process known as metastasis, and the metastatic effects are fatal. That's how you
Mm-hmm.
die from cancer. You don't die from this lump. Sure. I mean, number one, everyone should get screened.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll get the notion of, I don't want to know.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem with that is you'll never meet a cancer patient that says they didn't wish they knew earlier
Mm-hmm.
because it directly impacts your survival outcomes,
Yeah.
the time at which you detect. So, unfortunately, in cancer, ignorance is not bliss.
Mm-hmm.
Ignorance is typically a death sentence. You
Mm-hmm.
can't just ignore it. Like it is a problem. And if it's there, you need to know earlier rather than later because it gives rise to previously inconceivable diagnostic and therapeutic applications.
Mm-hmm.
For example, the presence or absence of CTCs in your blood is indicative of cancer.
Mm-hmm.
If you do not have an underlying tumor, there should not be something shooting off tumor cells into your bloodstream. They need a
Right.
source, an origin. They don't just spontaneously appear. As a result, if you could take a statistically significant sample of blood, i.e., 40 milliliters, not four, and you
Mm-hmm.
could detect the presence or absence of CTCs in that sample, you could screen the population for cancer.
Wow.
That is what Cancer Check Labs just released.
Hi, viewers. My name is Zupesh Jain. Greetings from the San Francisco Bay Area. I'm the host of the Exec Talk channel, a forum I started to talk to CEOs, executives, and other luminaries about their journeys and distill their experiences and learnings for our viewers' benefit. Today, we have the privilege of talking to Sumit Rai, who is a founder, CEO, and chairman of Cancer Check Labs. He has been involved in the development of its technology since 2010. Cancer Check Labs presents opportunities to realize previously inconceivable diagnostic and therapeutic applications in oncology and represents a disruptive breakthrough in cancer technology. Sumit is passionate about curing cancer because he lost his younger sister, his only sibling, to cancer and has served as the president of Cure Sonia, a nonprofit organization since 2012. Cure Sonia battles cancer through funding research programs at leading centers such as Stanford, USC, MD Anderson, and the City of Hope. Sumit was nominated in 2022 for the National Board of Leukemia and Lymphoma Society because of his contributions to combating cancer. He was previously the founder, CEO, and chairman of MobClicks, the leading real-time bidded mobile advertising exchange company that ramped to a 50 million annual revenue run rate in under 2 years, catalyzing the acquisitions by Velti and subsequently Telefonica. Sumit has over 20 years of venture capital, private equity, and hedge fund experience at firms including Riverside Partners, Crosslink Capital, and American Industrial Acquisition Corporation. During that time, he has acquired and invested in dozens of companies, He is an active angel investor and has been involved in startups throughout his careers and has served on several company boards as well. He holds a Bachelor of Science and Engineering degree in Electrical Engineering and Computer Science from the University of California at Berkeley, where he graduated early as a Regent Scholar. Sumit, I'd like to welcome you to my channel, and I'm really excited to be talking to you and knowing about your journey.
Thank you, Upesh. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So, Sumit, where did you grow up, and who were some of your role models and early influences, etc.?
I grew up in Los Angeles. I think, we had different people in our family doing different things. And my father was always a very corporate guy. That didn't seem like the path that I wanted to go down. I was
Hmm.
probably more inclined to follow the footsteps of maybe some of my uncles that had ventured off into business or gone into other industries outside of engineering. I think growing up in an Indian household with a strong math science background, you typically get stuffed into things like engineering,
Hmm.
but it definitely wasn't a passion. As much as I love technology, I didn't actually enjoy engineering quite as much as I enjoyed technology.
I
Yeah.
see. Okay, and you said your uncles were kind of your role models, and for the fact that they didn't kind of restrict themselves to the engineering core, so to speak.
Yeah, so I think they figured out how to apply, business in technical roles or come up with products, be innovative, be more entrepreneurial, and that's kind of where my heart was. I mean, I started my first small business as a little kid when I was 8 years old,
Hmm.
and selling Ninja Stars, and I was doing that, in my school, and I had friends that wanted to distribute in their school, and so I always had an entrepreneurial bend inside of me. That's where I knew I'd end up going ultimately.
Hmm.
And so I was always looking for other people that had built businesses or were entrepreneurial that I could ask questions, I could learn from. And I really didn't get a good set of mentors in that world until after, during and after college. It really started during college, where one of my professors taught a course,
Hmm.
which was a cross-disciplinary course between the engineering school and the business school.
I
And
see.
the whole course focused on writing business plans, starting a company, learning how to pitch to venture capitalists. What does it take to get a company or a startup off the ground? And that's sort of where it began. From
Hmm.
there, I worked at a series of funds where I had great mentors, a series of even companies where I had great operational mentors. And so I was very fortunate to learn a lot from those mentors over the years.
I see. So, to a certain extent, you were naturally inclined towards business and entrepreneurship. Uh, and then taking that course in college really embellished that, and you ventured into what you did, right? So, between high school and college and, your early professional life, up until you got involved in your current venture, what were some of the key things you did and you really cherish, and that kind of catapulted you into where you are today? Maybe some
Well,
inflection points. Yeah.
I mean, my first summer after freshman year of college, I taught martial arts.
Hmm.
And it was fun, and at that time I was making $50 an hour for teaching, which was a lot of money for me. And
Hmm.
then the following summer after sophomore year, I decided to get a real job, quote unquote, a real job. I went and became a software R&D engineer at Citibank. And they handed me this incredibly difficult problem to solve that they'd been working on for months. And I spent my entire summer, night and day sitting with this box
Hmm.
trying to solve this problem, and ultimately succeeded about 2 months later, but had such a miserable experience doing it the entire summer. Didn't see any friends, didn't interact with anyone, was just isolated writing code on this giant box, this SGI box that did a lot of processing for a video wall, and realized that I don't want to do this. And the year before, I was jumping around in my pajamas making 3 times as much money, and I was like, there's something just fundamentally broken here. Like,
Right.
I'm doing something I don't really really enjoy, and it's not even rewarding.
Hmm.
And so I decided I'm going to change path. And that's when I had the opportunity to take that course with this professor, Wade Dickinson, at Berkeley, where I really learned about the startup community, the venture capital community. And that is what led me into that that path in my career.
Okay. And did you get exposed to some startups through the professor, and you got involved in some of them?
Yes. So what he would do is he would put students together in teams of 3 or 4. They would write a business plan like they're doing a mock startup. They
Hmm.
would walk through the entire process. He would work with us on developing those business plans. Every Friday, he would bring in venture capitalists, CEOs, entrepreneurs. This is a 72-year-old gentleman that's been in Silicon Valley forever, is extremely well connected, and would bring those folks that he knew, his friends, into the classroom, and we
Hmm.
would pitch them. And you would go through this mock process of essentially fundraising, and at times some of the companies would actually get funded.
Wow.
And so there were companies that actually spawned out of that course. And so you'd have the opportunity to try to create a company, join a team that had a company, find ideas, but also see how some of this can actually come to fruition.
Right. Right. And these were real people from the real world critiquing your business plans. So
Making real investments.
yeah, making real investments. That's right. Okay. So, then in 2010, you started uh, at least working on the technology for cancer check labs. And, what led to the evolution of cancer check labs and, the consumer base it addresses? Can we talk about that for a minute?
Yeah. So I spent the first half of my career doing venture capital, private equity, then became a tech entrepreneur, as you mentioned, built a marketplace for in-application advertising for iPhone and Android apps.
Hmm.
Excuse me, and then sold that in 2010.
Okay.
And then after selling that, 3 months later, my only sibling, my younger sister, got diagnosed with cancer, and a year and a half later passed away. This is what got me into cancer 14 years ago. Prior to that, I had no exposure to cancer. I
Hmm.
barely knew what cancer was.
Hmm.
And so, first step was I invested in a company that was developing a technology that was very fundamental, in my opinion, to cancer,
Hmm.
because it could unlock a whole series of applications.
I see.
Well, and so now I don't know how much you know about cancer, but if you have a solid tumor,
Hmm.
lung cancer, prostate, colorectal,
Hmm.
pancreatic, liver, bladder, adrenal, throat, whatever, like any of the organ tumors, skin, brain, etc.
Yeah.
The primary tumor itself, the primary lump, generally does not kill you. What
Hmm.
kills you is the tumor sheds tumor cells that circulate through your bloodstream,
Hmm.
known as circulating tumor cells, or CTCs, the acronym for short. And the CTCs spread the cancer in your body in a process known as metastasis, and the metastatic effects are fatal. That's how you
Hmm.
die from cancer. You don't die from this lump.
Right.
Now, CTCs, circulating tumor cells, have been extensively and exhaustively studied over the past 30 years.
Hmm.
Much is known about them. A simple Google search would reveal thousands of papers on CTCs. Number one, CTCs are known to be the drivers of metastasis, the spread of cancer in the body through the
Hmm.
bloodstream. Number two,
Hmm.
CTCs are known to be homologous, similar to the primary tumor, because they're
Hmm.
really cells of the primary tumor that are sloughed off. They have
Right.
the same DNA, the same genome, they're micromodels.
Hmm.
Number three, CTCs are known to be prognostic, meaning predictive of outcome. High
Hmm.
CTC count, bad outcome. Lower CTC count, relatively speaking, better outcome. And that's
Right.
correlative, not causative. What's causative is high underlying tumor mass, high CTC count, bad outcome. Lower underlying tumor mass, lower CTC count, relatively speaking, better outcome. Uh,
Hmm.
Number four, CTCs are known to have the same response to drugs like chemo as the primary tumor, because again, they're cells of the primary tumor,
Yep.
and much, much more.
Hmm.
All of this research that's been conducted over the past 30 years
Hmm.
has been done with basically a dozen technologies that exist today. And depending on which of those technologies we're talking about, they can process anywhere from half a milliliter of blood,
Hmm.
9 milliliters of blood. No
Hmm.
one's ever really cracked 10 in
Hmm.
about 30 years. And that's fine for research, but that relegates you to the research realm.
Hmm.
At this point, we've spent close to $80 million over the last 14 years developing a proprietary filter that
Hmm.
can process over 10,000 milliliters of blood to extract CTCs. That is a 1000x 3 order of magnitude disruptive breakthrough in cancer. It has profound implications because it gives rise to previously inconceivable diagnostic and therapeutic applications.
Hmm.
For example, the presence or absence of CTCs in your blood is indicative of cancer.
Mhm.
If you do not have an underlying tumor, there should not be something shooting off tumor cells into your bloodstream. They need a
Right.
source, an origin. They don't just spontaneously appear. As a result, if you could take a statistically significant sample of blood, i.e. 40 milliliters, not 4, and you
Mhm.
could detect the presence or absence of CTCs in that sample, you could screen the population for cancer.
Wow.
That is what Cancer Check Labs just released.
Mhm.
Now, the implications of that are profound because
Mhm.
the key to curing cancer is catching it early. Survival rates at stage 0 are 99%.
Right.
We just co-published a paper with CVCC, Comprehensive Blood and Cancer Center, which is the largest private cancer center on the West Coast, and Christus Health, which is one of the 20 largest healthcare systems in the US as well. They have 600 locations, showing that we're detecting CTCs in stage 0 breast cancer, as an
Mhm.
example, showing that we're detecting CTCs in stage 1. We
Mhm.
have detected 1 millimeter prostate before.
Mhm.
So our ability to detect cancers very early on is there, and it's simply there because it's a very sensitive test. And the reason it's a very sensitive test is because we are detecting the cancer at a cellular level.
Mhm.
Today, when you deal with cancer, there are 5 primary screens that are utilized. There's
Mhm.
mammogram for breast cancer, colonoscopy for colorectal cancer, pap smear for cervical cancer, PSA for prostate, and
Mhm.
lung CT for lung.
Mhm.
Now, depending on your gender, you're not going to do all 5.
Correct.
If you're male, you're not going to do a pap smear and a mammogram. If you're female, you're not going to do a PSA exam. So you're
Mhm.
probably going to do 2 or 3. And most people don't do a lung CT unless they have risk factors.
Mhm.
They're a smoker, they have occupational hazard, like a firefighter,
Mhm.
they have genetic history, those types of things. But absent that, you're going to do 2 or 3 screens. There is nothing today for pancreatic,
Mhm.
liver, bladder, brain, skin, gastric, esophageal, adrenal, thyroid, all these other organ tumors. So you don't even cover half if you go through all the recommended procedures. So you should still do the recommended procedures, but there's a need to be able to screen for additional tumor types. So
Mhm.
now, because tumors tend to release CTCs into the bloodstream to spread and metastasize, the
Mhm.
mechanism by which all solid tumors metastasize, you
Mhm.
could screen for those solid tumors by identifying whether or not those CTCs are in the blood. Now,
Right.
what's interesting about CTCs is they share certain physical and mechanical characteristics:
Mhm.
size, structure, rigidity, lack of malleability, lack of deformability. They're big, they're hard, they're stiff, they don't bend.
Mhm.
Those types of parameters enable us to selectively capture the CTCs on our filter. And it
Mhm.
turns out that the physical and mechanical characteristics of CTCs are uniform and homogeneous across all solid tumor types and their subtypes. Therefore, the technology and the filters will indiscriminately catch the CTCs irrespective of its source organ,
I see.
making it a broad spectrum pan-cancer
Mhm.
technology for
Mhm.
screening.
Mhm.
Now, once you catch the cells, you can look at surface markers on the cells to try to trace back the probable origin. Is
Mhm.
it PSA positive? It's probably prostate.
Mhm.
Is it ER, estrogen receptor positive? It's probably breast, maybe
Mhm.
ovarian, things of that nature.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. I mean, uh, first of all, I mean, my own father died of lung cancer. So, he battled it for 6 years before he succumbed to it in 2019. So this really hits close to home as well. And secondly, I mean, what you described was, the early detection of CTCs is almost analogous to uh, preventing it in some ways, because the earlier the catch, the higher the probability of taking care of it, right? Like not
Yeah.
letting it metastasize. So. Well,
Mhm.
I mean, seems like it's a very, very fundamental test that can save people a lot of trouble later on. So,
Absolutely. And yeah, and detecting it early allows you to do something about it early
right.
and therefore hopefully prevent stage progression,
Hmm.
i.e. metastasis. But again, because again, metastasis is the problem generally.
Yep, yep. I know it too well, to to understand this. It spreads to other parts of your body, to the brain,
Right.
and it's a lost cause at that point. So, that's great, Sumit, that you're, dealing with such an important technology that can impact like millions of lives. I know I've heard you talk about some of the statistics, like, and it's also on your website, that 1 in 2 people, a male, would become exposed to cancer at some point, and there's a
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
currently the data, half of men and a third of women will get cancer in their lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
It's 40% of the population. It's actually going up.
Mm-hmm.
The NCI National Cancer Institute just raised it just over the last few years from 39.5 to 40.5. It
Mm-hmm.
took up a whole percentage point in just 4 years, which is pretty fast. And so, cancer is becoming far too prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just something that affects older people anymore. The incidence of cancer rising in the younger population is disturbing.
Yeah.
And if you look at colorectal cancers, they have doubled in incidence in the younger population under 55 in
Mm-hmm.
just the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
If
Yeah.
you look at mammograms, they're having discussions about bringing screening ages down to even 30 because they're just seeing a lot of, early incidence of cancer. And there's reasons they're seeing early incidence of cancer,
Okay.
but it is rising rapidly where the need to screen and the need to screen more broadly is becoming paramount for survival. It's a critical element of longevity because in high income developed countries, cancer is now the number one cause of mortality.
Mm-hmm.
It's overtaking or overtaken cardiovascular disease, depending on what geography we're discussing.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, what are some of the ups and downs you've experienced in taking this product to market? I mean, it's quite an involved process, and what you see is the tip of the iceberg here, but I'm sure a lot of work has gone into it and a lot of challenges, because it's not something that's kind of homegrown and you just market it. There's a lot of management and probably governance around it and restrictions. So what are some of the ups and downs, and how did you kind of go through those, and what keeps you motivated uh, at the end of the day?
Well, I think the first thing is you have to fund the company for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
and that's always a challenge for any company. In
Mm-hmm.
our case, the founders are some of the largest investors in the company. We never wanted to go down the typical venture capital private equity route.
Mm-hmm.
No intention of bringing in VCs or PE or hedge funds, that type of institutional capital. So
Mm-hmm.
we funded largely ourselves with friends and family.
Mm-hmm.
And that allowed us to keep control of the company, which is really important as the company evolves in the future because we have, strong intentions of doing additional philanthropy with this test.
Mm-hmm.
So for example, we just started a second nonprofit. So, as you know, I run Sonia and I run that for a dozen years. And we
Mm-hmm.
fund research in those institutions you mentioned. We also do financial assistance for underprivileged families that can't pay for their cancer care. We're
Mm-hmm.
also some of the largest registrars of bone marrow donors in the world. We registered over 10,000 people in 300 drives across 60 cities.
Mm-hmm.
Separate from that, we started a second nonprofit organization called Adopt a Firefighter, where we're going to aim to provide free screening
Mm-hmm.
for all the firefighters across the country because they have the highest incidence of cancer of almost any subpopulation. The incidence of cancer in firefighters for the service they provide to the community is 3 times the incidence of
Mm-hmm.
the average person. Firefighters don't die from fires and collapsing buildings. They die from cancer 72% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so the need for screening there is paramount. And so in the Dallas community, we're starting there, which is our home base. So we're going to start by screening the first, 2,000 firefighters in the Dallas Fire Department. We're contributing a couple $1 million worth of tests to make that happen. So, that's an example where we want to do a lot of philanthropy. We
Mm-hmm.
plan to subsidize or give away the test in third world regions in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Those are not things that investors and shareholders will look kindly to.
Mm-hmm.
Can't do that when you have a bunch of VCs that are very focused on, EPS and trying to take a company public.
Right. Right.
And so it just would create conflict
Mm-hmm.
in terms of what the mission of this is for the people that are involved in it and founding it, which is really to have just a drastic impact on outcomes in cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And so to do that, you need to make this ubiquitously available, for which we may need to subsidize it in certain parts of the world.
Right. Okay. But in terms of the trajectory of the technology and the product, are there any gaps that you need to surmount still uh, to make it quote unquote a success in the marketplace?
Well, I think what we had to do was so there's a lot involved in building the technology. So the filters that we manufacture to extract these CTCs are custom made.
Hmm.
They require custom equipment.
Hmm.
And so you cannot go buy this equipment off the shelf. You have to know how to make it. So there's multiple years of R&D involved in just making the equipment, custom laser housings, optical trains, power settings, casings, whatever the case might be, in order to make the equipment to actually make the filter.
Yeah.
So first, there's multiple years of R&D just to get the equipment created. Even if you make the equipment, then you have multiple years of R&D to make your first filter.
Hmm.
And even if you make your first filter 5, 6 years later, you then have to learn to mass produce them. That's going to take you another year or two. How do you make 10, 100, 1,000, so on and so forth?
I see.
Then, even if you do that, these filters have 117 million pores of a very specific geometry on which we have an issued patent in
Hmm.
every square foot. And so, how do you inspect that? So, you have to build automation algorithms to do the inspection at scale.
Hmm.
Then, even after you've done all that, you now have this custom filter, whatever, 8 years later,
Hmm.
and you're able to inspect it. But what do you do with it?
Hmm.
It's custom. It doesn't plug into any hardware.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now you got to go build custom filter assemblies to hold this, which we also did, on which we also have an issued patent. Then you have to build hardware to actually pump blood through it, which
Hmm.
we've also done, on which we have for another application an issued patent.
Hmm.
And so there's a lot of technical steps involved to get here, none
Hmm.
of which are trivial. It's been a whole bunch of different problems you have to solve in order to get to the point where you can manufacture,
Right.
these filters, these assemblies, the hardware to pump blood through it in order to get that all
Yeah.
complete so that we can create this test.
And it all takes time and money.
It all
So,
takes time and
yeah.
money.
And then I would imagine, the distribution is another ball game in terms
Sure.
of where people can take the test, how do they mail it in, whatever, right?
Right.
So, but nonetheless, it's a stride into an area that needs much attention.
Sure.
And so kudos to you and the team for doing that.
Thank you.
Um, so Sumit, any parting comments for people who are unfamiliar with this? And like if you were to uh, simplify it and have a message for people who are reluctant to take this test, or just any parting comments that you might have.
Sure. I mean, number one, everyone should get screened.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll get the notion of, I don't want to know.
Hmm.
But the problem with that is you'll never meet a cancer patient that says they didn't wish they knew earlier,
Hmm.
because it directly impacts your survival outcomes,
Yeah.
the time at which you detect. So unfortunately, in cancer, ignorance is not bliss.
Hmm.
Ignorance is typically a death sentence. You
Hmm.
can't just ignore it. Like it is a problem. And if it's there, you need to know earlier rather than later.
Hmm.
You need to be able to screen more broadly, not just for the things that they're screening for now, but also these other organ tumors like pancreatic that don't have any good screens.
Right.
And when we're the way we do this, because of the technology, we are extracting whole intact tumor cells from the blood sample such that we can physically affix them onto a glass slide like a tissue
Hmm.
biopsy,
Hmm.
can stain them like a tissue biopsy.
Hmm.
We can put them in the palm of a pathologist to examine like a tissue biopsy under a
Hmm.
microscope, and
Hmm.
they can issue a board certified pathology report,
Wow.
and those reports conform with standard of care.
Hmm.
And so it is essentially a tissue biopsy. It's just the novelty is we've figured out how to extract the cells, the cellular tissue,
Hmm.
from a blood sample. That's
Yeah.
all.
And one subtlety that I think I caught on to is also the fact that if you conduct this test much earlier on, you might not have other symptoms that lead you to believe that you have the disease, right? So you might appear to be healthy, but some of these early indicators, uh, for lack of a better word, a stage zero kind of analysis on um, early
Yeah,
indicators of this
yeah,
disease.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, you want to find it
yeah.
early. It's not always symptomatic. To your point, a good example would be pancreatic cancer.
Hmm.
Pancreatic cancer is a presumed death sentence.
Mhm.
Pancreatic cancer is not a death sentence.
Mhm.
Stage 4 pancreatic cancer is often a death sentence.
Mhm.
Stage 1 pancreatic cancer is usually curable. You'll
Right.
just never find it.
Mhm.
There's no symptoms, there's no easy screen, there's no easy diagnostic. The
Yeah.
only way they find it early is often by accident.
Right.
They're doing a procedure in an adjacent organ, let's say the liver, they notice an abnormality, they do a biopsy, and they go, whoa, we found pancreatic cancer. Now, that doesn't happen often, but it does happen. And when it happens, if it occurs at stage 1, for example, stage 1 is broken into 1A and 1B.
Mhm.
Survival at 1B is 85%.
Wow.
Survival at 1A is 92%. Survival at stage 0 is like 99%.
Wow.
So, so it's not about sort of the type of cancer and the cancer being super deadly. It's about identifying it early so that you can intervene and do something about it before
Mhm.
it has metastasized throughout your body.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Seems like a very noble cause, and of course, much needed. As I said, can really change the approach to this for mankind. So, I really want to wish you all the best, and uh, hope this is a very, very successful venture. And I really appreciate you, Sumit, for taking the time, and I acknowledge you for making time for me and my viewers and being vulnerable about your personal life and your endeavors to take this disease by the horns. My hope is that you're supremely successful with this and that you impact lives for the greater good that we need so much in the world today. So I applaud you, and, take care, and thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Amish. It was fun to catch up.
Yeah. Thank you. Take care.
Bye. Bye.